My name is Gabby Powers. I am a product marketing manager at Netsertive. I am joined here today with Erin Martin, our VP of marketing. We are going over all things RFP or request for proposal today. So, running a successful high-performing RFP process for a franchise marketing vendor. Before we kick it off, a little bit about Netsertive if you are unfamiliar with us. Netsertive is the digital marketing partner really built for franchise and multi-location brands. So we help national networks win locally by combining data, automation, and the hands-on expertise of our award-winning customer experience team. Our platform connects corporate marketing strategies with local execution to really help drive stronger visibility, better leads, and measurable ROI for every location. And as Erin mentioned, we've seen many an RFP in our day. And so we're excited to share some insights after we've analyzed, I think, like 20 to 30 RFPs over the past couple of years from some of our potential clients and current clients. And also, I have a background on brand franchise as well. I'm working in the health and wellness industry. So a little bit of a combo today between Erin and myself of looking at all things RFP. So to really gauge our conversation and start off strong, wanted to talk through a little bit of the state of franchise marketing in 2025 and what we're really experiencing when it comes to what's changed since 2024. Plot twist, a lot of things have just really built and become more and more scalable as far as media costs rising, budgets tightening, right? I think we've been talking about this now for years, but I do think this year is one where we really see those budgets tighten. And so every media dollar is having to go further on both the digital and the local grassroots marketing scale. And I think one thing that is really contributing to that is the presence of AI and how the AI for both vendors and using it on the vendor side, but also how brands have started to incorporate AI into really operationalizing their franchise processes and equipping their local owners to utilizing it in their day-to-day business. And really that AI piece, we've seen now the brands that are incorporating it and doing it well are moving light years ahead of those who are still struggling to implement it. And so that is a really key piece of successful operations in 2025. And when we're looking at RFPs moving in 2026, I think that's something that we've seen as a big trend of a lot of our customers coming in, looking for a vendor to help them successfully implement AI into their network and into their digital marketing practices. Another thing that I think we will always see build on, but especially when budgets tighten, local franchisees are going to continue to expect transparency and visibility into all of their marketing metrics. So as budgets are tightening and every dollar has to go further, local owners are going to be paying more and more attention to their marketing. And whether they are marketing experts or maybe a marketing novice, they want to better understand and collaborate with their partners in order to see success for their business moving into the new year. Another thing I think is huge, CRM integrations. And so data silos being broken down so that you have a central source of truth for everything that's working in your business. So you have the data to be able to make strong business decisions, both on the marketing side, but also on the sales and operations side to really combine your business and make it a really holistic approach towards revenue growth. And then, of course, every franchisor's maybe nightmare, maybe dream. How do you achieve that national and local alignment with your franchisees while also growing the national brand at the corporate level? That is even harder, I think, when you do not have shared reporting and shared KPIs, performance indicators of what's the most important to move the business forward. So what we're seeing franchisors prioritize the most in RFPs right now, and just in general as we're moving 2026, predictive analysis and making sure that they understand if I invest this much into marketing, here is what I should be getting out from that. And if I'm not getting that out, how do I change my marketing course so I can better achieve my business goals? Unified dashboards for franchise systems and unified tech systems, so those integrations that make data flow really seamless for franchise marketers. Of course, the more AI we can utilize, the faster we can optimize, the faster we can grow and move the algorithms for campaigns. But I think another big piece of this that we're seeing be super successful in digital marketing is that local personalization of all digital media. So of course, we want to be fast and optimizing and using our network data to optimize campaigns. But ultimately, we want to make sure that we are respecting those local differences and the local personalizations that make the franchise business at the local level even stronger and more relatable to their local customers. And then lastly, something that's always the top of mind for a really strong franchise marketer is the onboarding process and the support visibility into their marketing performance for the local owner. So how do we collaborate with local owners and franchisees and ensure that they understand marketing and feel confident in investing more into their marketing as they are trying to grow their businesses? So a lot's changed in 2025. A lot's also stayed the same, but I think the stakes have been raised in a way, and that is really impacting how franchise marketers are prioritizing what they're getting from their vendors.
I'll also chime in real quick, Gabby, too, from one vendor side tip as well, is there's not only a lot changing in the world of digital marketing, but also in the vendor landscape. There's so many more point solutions and fragmentation. We're seeing leadership turnover. There's some companies who are going through layoffs. So there's just a lot that other vendors can be up against as well. And so the partners who are not on top of and pushing the needle with technology and AI are falling behind. And so it makes finding and continually evaluating that right tech stack and partner ecosystem so important.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's super important. And I think that really bleeds into this next slide of the RFP process. What is it? Of course, we understand it's the vetting of vendors and that process of finding the best vendor for your franchise system. But I also think something that's not talked about as much is why is it so daunting for a marketer to take on? And from the brand side, I understand that pain point. And I think as we talk to our customers on the Netsertive side, we hear these things time and time again, but RFPs can be really challenging. You have to align so many stakeholders and really get everyone on the same page before you can even talk to vendors. And then you're trying to figure out what each vendor actually offers and what it's going to look like in real life to have them support your network. And so have it all boiled down into one sentence of aligning leadership, supporting diverse local needs of every local owner, evaluating very different vendor models, and then also ensuring that they protect their brand data so you have the ownership of your brand assets and then also have that national brand visibility that these franchise brands have done so much and invested so much in growing, but can also have the localization to make local franchisees successful. So we are not strangers to the fact that this process can be very daunting for the franchise marketer. And so that's really what inspired this presentation of how can we make it a little bit easier to judge vendors fairly, make sure we get exactly the information that we need from them to make educated decisions that will ultimately lead to more success on the franchisee front.
And I'll also add in on the alignment piece. In most cases where I see massive delays in an RFP timeline or I see the process go sideways, 90% of the time it's because of that alignment of C-suite and franchisees isn't there. So we're going to touch on more of that later, but all of your hard work will get blown up if alignment on the goals and the needs is not there. And I've just seen it happen so often.
100%. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I'm actually pretty neutral or feel pretty okay about my vendors that I'm working with right now, that's totally fine too. I think as we're entering a new year and you're looking at budgets and allocation, the best part of this conversation is this could mean that, you want to look at new vendors for 2026, or maybe just taking a second to have conversations with your current vendors to really establish that trust and connection to make sure that everyone is still on the same page as you're moving forward into the new year. So when should I know that I need to evaluate my digital marketing vendors? We have a couple of key pain points that we've heard from a lot of customers recently of, that was the moment that I realized that I might need to take another approach to how I'm supporting my franchisees with our vendor partnerships. So the very first one is really understanding your goals and your performance metrics. So does your vendor know what KPIs matter most to your franchise? I think the important thing to start here is to make sure, one, that your corporate team and your franchisees have the same shared language around what KPIs matter most to your franchise. Once you have that internal alignment of, okay, our corporate team understands this and our franchisees are on board that these three metrics are the most important for us to measure, That's when you want to bring that information to your vendor and say, hey, here's what our brand is centered around. Is this what you're optimizing all of our strategies towards? Or are we a little misaligned here? So a red flag here of maybe you want to check your vendor partnership. Are your conversions on paid media or just your strategies overall for digital marketing being optimized to your franchisees' goals by location? Or does it seem to be like they're targeting something completely different that isn't really driving success for your business? So that's one key thing that I think you have to have that internal alignment first, but you have to make sure that that internal alignment, once it's reached, is also communicated to your vendors so that everyone is on the same page and they're not hearing different goals or different KPIs from individual owners or from your corporate team.
And related to what you had said earlier, Gabby, about integrations as well, this is also a key piece where we're seeing it going from a nice to have to a must have. You have to know the impact of your digital marketing and how it's working to gather customers and sales. And so those fragmented tech stacks and siloed data makes it hard, but it's really becoming a requirement these days to help with showing some of these performance metrics as well. So I'd say if you don't have those integrations related to this topic, that's also a problem and a flag for evaluation.
And once you have them, you'll like never know why you didn't have them in the first place. You're going to feel like you have so much more power to make those data decisions. So I love that. One other piece that I think is super important that we've actually heard from a lot of brands lately is budget allocation between platforms and the performance associated. So we still have brands coming to us and talking about, our franchisees are heavily invested on Google, or they're heavily invested on Meta. And, we really want to be able to have an omnipresent approach to ensure that we are everywhere online, because ultimately our customers are everywhere online and we want to make sure we reach them where they're at. So your vendor, when you're looking at implementing multiple platforms like this, should really be evaluating budget efficiency to ensure that the bulk of your budget is going towards the platforms, getting you the highest quality leads possible. So a red flag here may be that misalignment between where your budget or your monetary dollars are going and the performance, not just like leads coming in, but ultimately lead quality and what you guys are selling or getting your most revenue from. So let's say you're getting tons of leads from Meta and you said CPL is a really important metric for your brand, but ultimately you're getting really high quality leads from Google. Oh, some brands may say we rather get less leads, but super high quality leads from Google. So we should be investing more there. But if your partner is only investing in Meta because you're getting more leads, that's going to be a misalignment that's going to ultimately hurt your bottom line at the end of the day. So having those conversations, and that's where data transparency really comes into play. And even those integrations that Erin mentioned of being able to see your return on ad spend from different platforms, that is some nuggets of data that your franchisees will love and hold on to. And that's what encourages them to want to invest more. So when there's misalignment here, it's a really small thing that can ultimately lead to a very big loss in revenue if you're not investing in the right places. And then even with budget, one last thing on the budget side, because I think franchisee dollars, that is where the buck stops, right? We want to make sure we understand where they are investing and what's the most valuable. What bidding strategies is your vendor currently using? And do they make sense with your goals and best practices? So bid red flag here. If you are launching campaigns with the vendor and 6 months in to 12 months in, the bidding strategies are the exact same as they were when you first launched, bid red flag, because ultimately a really strong digital marketing vendor understands that you have to change that strategy as the campaigns progress to match the algorithm and the learnings and where those campaigns are at. So we want to make sure that we're never having that set it and forget it, because ultimately your franchisees are probably paying a monthly retainer to this vendor for digital marketing. And if they're seeing a set it and forget it strategy at play, they're going to be questioning, why am I investing monthly if I'm barely getting any service for that monthly retainer?
Yeah, and I love this one because if you don't know, then you need to ask and educate yourself to understand. Because I've also seen scenarios where, a brand knows that their vendor is handling paid media, but they have no clue that, for example, that vendor is running a Google Smart campaign, which is basically a minimal effort, AI powered campaign type that we would never recommend using. So you need to make sure that you do have a handle on this, at least enough so that you can then ask the right questions and push that vendor to be on top of it.
100%. I think that really bleeds into that set it and forget it approach. We're going to talk about it with optimizations too. So not just budget, but how many times are you aware of how many times your vendor is going in and making adjustments to make your marketing strategy stronger? So I think the chart on the left here is something that I was really impressed with when I first met with the Netsertive team of looking at the activity for a 200 location franchise brand within the first month of what they were doing on the campaign side. A lot of metrics here, but two that I'll call out: 3,500 monthly campaign changes and almost 1,900 monthly ad changes. So those are tangible numbers that you can show to an owner and say like, hey, you pay XYZ in a retainer to this vendor. Here is the work they're doing behind the scenes. Even if you only meet with them monthly or quarterly, here is all the activity and every touch point they're having with your individual location to make you successful. These numbers build trust, which then gains the trust of the franchise owner, which then allows them to feel confident in a marketing partner to invest in more. So I think with budgets being tightened, how can we make our owners understand the trustworthiness of our vendors? Data transparency like this is really key to be able to do that successfully.
Yeah, and a few other things that I'd throw in that a vendor should easily be able to do include like regular creative refreshes, dynamic content updates, A/B testing, all those things that are modern marketing tactics.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with that too, looking at who is driving your strategy, I think that A/B testing part is huge on that. So a testing roadmap is not something that you should have to give to a vendor and say, please implement this. If you were doing that, you might as well just hire a junior marketer in that side, but you're paying a vendor a management fee, a retainer, whatever that may be, for their expertise and their data to be able to say, here's what's going to work based on all the clients that I work with. Here's how I think we should customize it to your brand. So a red flag here, if you feel like you're having to lead every strategy conversation or constantly bring new ideas to your vendor, it's definitely a give and a take. You want to make sure that you're leading brand and you're staying true to your brand, and that's your job as a franchise marketer. But you want to make sure to lean into the data and success that your vendor has and be able to use that to your benefit to grow your marketing strategy faster. So a couple signs: if your vendor's being a little bit more reactive and not proactive, if you are having to initiate those conversations about optimization, or you're asking for reporting instead of receiving those updates. And another thing, bringing new ideas that they simply implement. You should be able to bring ideas to a vendor that they then build off of, not just change the copy or change the creative. They should be saying, oh, that's an awesome creative idea. Here's another platform that you could really benefit being on that would really take that creative well. So it's all about building upon the brand strategy you guys already have in place, not just implementing it and letting it go from there.
Yeah, and there's a few other things that I'll note that you can look for on a partner who would be more proactive like this. You want to, like Gabby said, have them bring the trends and education to you and have a pulse on the industry in general. Are they embedded in the community? Are they pushing quality content? Are they thought leaders out there and putting different point of views out there to make the industry smarter? Those are all signs of the company's culture and general approach. And so you're going to feel that in the strategy and support piece if you're a customer as well.
Love it. And then very last one on the red flag list that I'll say is looking at a full funnel marketing strategy. So customers may have different vendors for paid or for local listings, whatever that may be. We've seen the most success when brands determine that they have a need in multiple digital marketing landscapes to really find a vendor that does them all decently well, all of them, because when your strategy can be aligned across all these different platforms, you really allow your digital presence to be really consistent online. Consistency online is one of the best ways to build organic presence and allow your brand to grow without having to invest thousands more dollars into paid media. So when you're looking at your social vendors organically or your paid media vendors, what are they doing to ensure that you have a full funnel marketing strategy that is optimizing your entire digital footprint? So because of the changing landscape in paid, and budgets just not going as far as they used to, I think a big red flag here is that they have an overemphasis on just paid media and not optimizing any other part of the funnel. Then we need to look at that as a way of, what else are you doing to be able to ensure that you have a strong lead flow outside of just paid media, and how can you optimize that so that it's a funnel for you in itself and not just having to invest to get leads in, because certain businesses have, seasonal changes and fluctuations in their lead flow where you can spend a ton more on paid media and not get much more of a return. But if you have a really strong organic presence, you're going to be top of mind when you're back into your heavy season and be able to really drive success from there. So vendors that at least have the strategy in mind of how do we market and, really optimize your entire digital footprint are the ones that are going to help you grow even when leads may be a little slower on the paid side.
Yeah, which can be the problem if you have a point solution approach, because then if you're bringing all the different partners and vendors on to do one thing really well, they don't widen their aperture to understand what's fully needed, and that onus is on you, unless you pull back the curtain and allow them in to help be that. So just something to be aware of as you craft that RFP, because you want to have that marketing system work holistically, like Gabby's saying.
100%. And when you determine that you want to really start that RFP process, I do think determining the scope at the beginning may seem like kind of like a basic thing to do, but I do think it's really important to determine the scope ahead of time so that you can find a partner that's going to be able to help each part of a digital footprint. So if you've been on any webinar that I've helped led since I joined the Netsertive team, you've seen this visual. I think this visual is so powerful because when you think about digital marketing, there are so many levers to pull. And at the same time, there are only so many levers to pull. So you want to make sure that you're doing them almost in the right order so that you have every strategy being as strong as possible. So our digital marketing hierarchy of needs visual, I think, is really helpful for understanding that there are certain channels, like the ones that you fully own, like your web content or your local pages, that are so incredibly impactful to your digital marketing strategy. And when you optimize those, you help every other part of the hierarchy be even stronger, more actionable, and more lead gen focused. So digital presence is another one, listings management, review monitoring, social content, that we sometimes hear a lot of franchises like, yeah, we do that, but it's not a huge priority. I'd argue that that digital presence piece, if you're doing that really well, you're going to see such a strong return on investment for your advertising, because people already have that know, like, and trust of your brand on their minds when they actually see a paid media advertisement. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at, what do I need a vendor for? What do I need help with in 2026? When I'm looking at, here's my internal marketing team, here's our franchisees' pain points. Here's kind of a way to make sure that you're hitting every possible piece of the scope of a RFP to ensure that you have a full strategy in place. And when you have one vendor managing all of this, the strategy can be really consistent. And like I said, consistency is key in having a strong digital presence that consumers know, like, and trust. So with that being said, I'm going to toss it over to Erin to really go over the components of a high-performing RFP and some of the aspects that we see customers really grateful for at the end of the day that they included, because it made their vendor process so much easier for them to start.
Love it. And yeah, I'd say with a high level, most RFPs either request way too much information to be submitted or too little. So you need to find that Goldilocks spot that focuses on what will actually drive performance and accountability for your brand. These are the 8 kind of core components that you see on the slide, is what we recommend that you include, and then make them your own by providing context within those buckets. So I won't read all of these, for example, but an example of providing context is franchisee support. You don't have to just ask, what does your one-on-one support program look like? You could say, please provide an example of how you coach franchisees in a one-on-one support model. For context, our franchisees are really frustrated with our current partner because they're just being read the news, and we need a partner who's strategic and be proactive with our franchisees. So getting to that level of context and specificity will get you more clarity into how a vendor actually works for better evaluation. And then another big piece to be sure to include is your technology and data requirements. Data is one of the biggest assets that brands have today. And so vendors have to work alongside your ecosystem, not take control of it. So the requirements you see here is what we recommend on including, and these are also included in the RFP template that we're going to share with you guys at the end, to ensure that you end up working with a partner who can assist in harnessing your data, which is one of the biggest opportunities for marketers today. And this is also where I see a lot of brands fall down in just not having a clear understanding of their plan for data and technology, either for the coming year or for the next 2 years, and how they want to have their marketing ecosystem work. Because an RFP, you're basically crafting a partnership operating manual. So you need to be really clear internally on how you want things to work to ensure that you can properly vet a partner that will not only work with your current tech stack, but then also your future vision.
I love that. And I think that's one important thing too. We're talking about aligning internal stakeholders. That's where the marketing team is going to have to potentially loop in operations or loop in your technology, arm of your business to really ensure that you have a full scope of what you think that needs to be done. But that ultimately, if there's pain points in other parts of the business that marketing doesn't necessarily manage, but can be solved by having a really strong digital marketing or tech partner, that is where I think other departments get really excited. And when you have that internal buy-in, that makes a transition to a new vendor so much easier than when you're having to teach the internal team and then you're learning things as you're onboarding that you have to then go back and fix. And so that alignment from the beginning with not just your franchisees and your leadership, but also other parts of the company, I think is really successful when you're implementing a new vendor.
Yeah, 100%. And then we're going to dive into how to actually build your RFP. So we have it broken down into 4 simple steps. And as I mentioned, there's an awesome template that you guys can steal and make your own based on what you've learned today. So that first step, we've touched base on it a ton, but that internal alignment, as we're harping on, is paramount. So before you write a single question, the marketing team should be aligned with corporate, operations, leadership, everything that Gabby just said on what you're actually trying to solve for. So I think this is one piece when you're on a marketing team where sometimes it will feel maybe like pulling some of the cobwebs out of the closet. You've got to, surface some things that might be uncomfortable truths you have to face, but the time is now to make sure that you're all on the same page. Because it's not only critical for a successful RFP process and then picking the right partner, but more importantly, for the success of your future marketing program. Because if you don't have those correct expectations, that's when you lose trust with your boss or leadership team members and your network. So all of that upfront work is really setting the foundation for a smooth and efficient marketing program. And then step number 2, we're actually putting pen to paper. So these are a few tips when actually writing the RFP. So the top tip is being that a focused RFP will get better answers. Vendors respond more thoughtfully when they know exactly what the brand wants to understand. So being concise, specific, and providing context, like I mentioned. And also remember that the first formal RFP doesn't have to do it all. This is just the first date. So you can introduce a second round of follow-up questions later on. That can be the second date. So just don't try and boil the ocean in that first submission request. And then another tip that I'd give is that when it comes to proposals, I've seen a lot of brands ask for a proposal upfront in the very first submission request. So if you ask for a full-fledged proposal before you've gone on that first date, you have to expect that it's just going to be a ballpark, best guess. So instead of doing that, one thing that I've seen work really well is to ask how a vendor's pricing model works, which is great because it gets to a deeper understanding of how a vendor prices things, which matters because you want to understand that to best negotiate against it. So I think this is just such a more valuable way to eventually understand, how much is this partnership going to be to buy? But it gives you more tools for negotiation along the way because everything is negotiable.
100%. I love that. And I think that pricing model piece is probably, from my time on the brand side, the most confusing part of a lot of this because every vendor prices so differently. And so having an idea of what pricing structure works for you as a brand is really important, but then also understanding how that pricing structure may be interpreted or changed by different vendor models is really important as well. So I think having clear lines of communication and someone on the vendor side that you can have those transparent conversations with. Transparency during the RFP process is only going to be an indication of transparency when you're actually in a partnership. So that's in a direct line to their internal team. So I think that's a really great way to tell if you have that personal, transparency connection with them to be able to feel successful and have, those conversations that may be a little bit tough or uncomfortable early on in the process as well.
Yeah, love it. And then step number 3 is building a fair evaluation model. So this is something where I see a lot of RFPs don't have this, which is basically creating a clear scoring rubric for everyone to evaluate vendors on. And that just makes the evaluation smoother and far more objective and moves people out of the I feel this way into objective scoring that you can lean on. So this is also helpful so that, for example, like pricing wouldn't overshadow the need for a strategic fit, which can be really tempting for a short term, for a decision to just go with the lowest price. But 99% of the time, making a decision on price alone leads to headaches down the line. I think there's a good meme or image out there that has like a cheap box of wine with that tagline. Price alone leads to headaches down the line, but it's so true. So I'd also note that evaluation bias can also happen if you have only one person reviewing proposals. One person's decided to lean it, do the reviewing. So encourage group situations so that you can have some more stakeholders and have everybody evaluate individually then before meeting as a group so that you can have some more minds and voices, but you also avoid that groupthink and can protect the objectivity. And then the last step, number 4, is the shortlist and final presentation. So like I said, a great process usually has that first date, and this is now the point where we're going to skinny it down to our shortlist. So you can align on any vendor who advance and the pros and cons of each. And then this is a stage where you're going to start to really dig in with those second date questions. So request things like live dashboard demos, case studies, basically think behavioral interviewing type nuggets that you're trying to get at. You could ask, what have you done or would you do in XYZ situation, to give a real life scenario that you've faced or maybe that was handled poorly by a previous vendor, to get at those, how they handle or approach different situations. So asking for real reporting, you could ask for samples of one-on-one franchisee check-in meeting agendas. Just all of those real life scenario materials and questions will provide a clear view of what working with a partner could look like. And then, of course, you also are evaluating the team not just for the quality of support that they'll provide, but you'll also be looking for that culture and working relationship fit. So a true partner should operate like they're an extension of your team. So you can dig in and almost evaluate like you would a new marketing team hire, check their communication style, experience, engagement with franchisees, all of that has to align with how you do things because you want to have one united front and that awesome working relationship to make everything work together well.
I love it. Awesome.
I'll pass it to Gabby. She's going to take us on home on how to turn it into some long-term accountability.
So after you absolutely crush your RFP process and you find the absolute best vendor for your franchise network, I think it's really important that with a new vendor, you get a fresh slate for accountability and really ensuring that you are setting up your network for so much success using your past experience. And so some of this is repeated from the beginning, but I think it's important after you do that entire process and get your franchise network onboarded to a new vendor, you've gone through a lot and you're a little exhausted. And I feel that. So it's so important after you do all of that work to hold your vendor accountable after the ink of that partnership agreement dries. So what that can look like, and every vendor will have a different, process for this that they're probably used to, but quarterly business reviews where again, your vendor is bringing strategy conversations back to you using your data as well to lead that conversation. So when they can have access to your data and then be able to build strategy, that's when you're going to see their bread and butter, or what should be their bread and butter, and how they are going to help grow your network far beyond just what your corporate team would be able to accomplish themselves. And so using their expertise, helping to educate your team, and then also educating your franchise owners, these QBRs are a great opportunity to do that because they're going to actually have the data at their disposal to be able to, work off of real life scenarios for your business. Dashboard access, of course, I think that should be bare minimum at the very least, 24/7 dashboard access. So you have the data at your disposal at all times. And then again, optimization logs. So you can see exactly what they're doing, even if you're only meeting weekly, bi-weekly, quarterly, whatever that may be. Optimization logs, I think, are the best way to show franchisees, one, transparency on what's happening in the background, but also transparency that their dollars are being put to hard work and helping them to have better results in their marketing strategy. And then, of course, clear KPIs and scalable support agreements that meet your franchisees where they're at. So whether they're a marketing novice or they're a marketing expert, they feel like they have the collaboration in place to feel confident in their marketing. And then take digital marketing, of course, which is what typically these vendors are doing for you. But they feel educated by that marketing practice and actually feel confident to go out into the real world and do grassroots marketing as well. So I think that's a huge, huge thing here. They should be able to take insights from their digital marketing as far as customer personas, best leads coming in, conversations from calls coming in if you have call tracking technology. All of that educates those local owners and allows them to feel more confident in who their target personas are, who their true market locally is, and be able to take that and grassroots market. The best franchise marketers are the ones that have a really strong digital marketing partner in place so that the owners can focus on grassroots and local marketing, because that is where the business is going to shine and build that external trust that then, of course, bleeds back into digital marketing and helps those campaigns to perform stronger. So that ecosystem is so important, and a strong digital marketing partner who is helping to collaborate with your owners can really set that foundation for success for your network. And then, of course, very lastly, what a winning partnership should look like long term. I think it's important here to look at, what a winning partnership is and then what that's going to mean for your bottom line and for you at the end of the day. So proactive strategy and insights rather than reactive. Your team is going to get ahead of trends instead of having to react every time there's an algorithm shift or something crazy happens with AI. You're not going to feel behind. You're going to feel like you have someone in your corner being able to help you move forward. Unified reporting across all locations. One, way less headaches, I promise you that. But two, everyone's going to see the same data and they're going to feel confident that they understand what that data means, not just for like marketing and leads, but ultimately for their business bottom line. Clear communication, strong franchisee support. You want your Zs to feel supported and also confident and trustworthy in their marketing program. It makes your life as a franchise marketer so much easier, but also makes them feel more confident in the structure that you guys are providing for them at the home office. And then predictable performance as much as possible, driven by consistent optimization. So marketing is never 100% predictable, of course, but what it should be able to do is predictable of here's what should happen. And if it doesn't happen that way, totally fine. But how do we fail fast, course correct, and make sure that at the end of the day, that franchisee is still successful? What it matters that performance will become stable and scalable across the system so that ultimately you're driving growth for those each individual franchise location. So a winning partnership can really make your life easier as a franchise marketer. And all of that starts with the RFP process and asking a couple of really key questions that we went over today to ensure that you're setting yourself up for success. And with that, we are open to questions in the chat. And I know Erin mentioned earlier as well, we do have a digital marketing partner RFP template actually available on our website under resources. There is also a QR code on the screen if you wanted to scan it. It'll take you to our website. But it is a full customizable Google Doc that you can take, make a copy of it and then edit it to meet your brand that you need. It's built out as if you needed an entire digital marketing partner suite. So it is a good starting point if you're a little overwhelmed with the written portion, but it really gives you some tangible ways that you can plug and play your own brand's information, but make sure that it's structured in a way that vendors will respond to quickly and really effectively with their answers. So we're super excited to build this out and just have it available for free for anyone so that as you're going through this process, maybe in January, maybe down the road, that it's there to be able to support you and help you.
And I don't see any questions in the QA box, but I will say that I am always available if anyone has any questions. Like I said, I have seen so many in my lifetime. So if you needed just a sounding board or someone else to give you some advice one-on-one, I'd be happy to connect too. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah, you probably all have Erin on LinkedIn, but if not, her email is on the screen. And I think Erin may crush that time-wise. We have 1 minute left. So if we don't have any questions in the chat, we will go ahead and give you 1 minute of your Tuesday back. But we very much appreciate you joining our webinar today. And look out, of course, we will have webinars monthly going in 2026 as well. So we appreciate all of you joining and hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Have a good one, guys.